Welcome to episode 61 of Civil War Breakfast Club podcast. Tonight, I am joined by the second most famous person from Waltham, Massachusetts, outranked only by Kyle Schwarber from the Boston Red Sox, Darren Weeks. I'm Mary, the sometimes grumpy Canadian co-host he has, whose favorite general is Oliver Otis Howard.
Oh, wow. How about you get Howard involved in this one? Little Kyle Schwarber talk. Outstanding.
Hey, what'd you think of that?
Oh,
I ranked you two above Nathaniel Banks.
And well, that's praise from Caesar right there, but I'll take it. And I don't think myself or Kyle Schwarber will have a school named after them, like the Nathaniel Banks School in Waltham, but we'll take it. Proud Waltham guy,
Like I tweeted earlier today, there's a Banks Square. There needs to be a Schwarber Ave. And this is coming from an Indians fan.
I know. It's crazy.
I was impressed with what I saw last night.
It was a good game. It was a great game. Long way to go. But any case, how are you? What's going on?
I'm good. How are you?
No, it's good. It's good. We had a great weekend. Our friend Bill from the 717 Gettysburg came to visit me. We hung out, did some shenanigans in the city, and got to missed our Facebook Live because of it. But I had a note from the doctor, so I'm okay. I was out running.
No big deal. It's our first Facebook Live that we missed, but I think that's going to make this Saturday's today when this episode drops, Saturday 10 o'clock is our Facebook Live. It'll probably make it just that much better. We'll have two battles to talk about, Perryville and the battle we're discussing today. We are back in the Eastern Theater, and we are going to be discussing Cedar Creek.
Back in Virginia, Cedar Creek. But before we get started, as always, there is business to do and libations to announce. So,
since you were the second greatest person from Waltham, why don't you start us off?
All right, fine. From you with a good time. I am drinking from the great Fourscore Beer Company. It's called Can Conditioned Pub Ale. It's got Abraham Lincoln on it, Mary. He's the guy with the hat from Illinois who was a president that we talked about.
Right.
And I'm drinking from my North Civil War Champions mug because this is a pretty big victory for the Union, this Battle of Cedar Creek we're going to talk about. So what about yourself?
So I am drinking a beer from Market Brewing Company, which is based out of Newmarket, Ontario, and it is called Given the Circumstances West Coast IPA. And I chose that beer because when Sheridan finally arrives at Cedar Creek, he's asking some of his generals why they were back in that position they were. And one of them said, given the circumstances, basically. I'm just paraphrasing, but I thought that beer I saw that. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like what his generals said to him when he got back to Cedar Creek.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So
I am drinking it out of my it's impossible to show it with the background, but my General George Gordon Meade mug, because that's usually my mood, my spirit animal for my mood on Tuesday nights.
Yeah. Old grumpy Pete, as I say in the movies.
Okay.
Yeah, the Battle of Cedar Creek's a good one, though. We're going to talk about it in more detail, I think. But I think it's important as we get started with this to set up how the players got there, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we've danced around the valley and different things, talking about Kernstown, talking about Monocacy a little bit. And there's a bunch of things about this, but this is kind of the, like we did Perryville a couple of weeks ago or last week. It was kind of the end all be all of the state of Kentucky, or the Commonwealth of Kentucky, right? Mm-hmm. And Battle of Cedar Creek is the end all be all for the valley, right? So it's kind of end state. So, just real quick, just turn back time as you like to sing.
If I could turn back time. Well, hey, you did send me that email the other night about that they need singers for the national anthem for Boston College, right?
Yeah, you should absolutely do that in a game. I'm out of town.
I'm thinking about it.
Just my poor ears. Anyway,
you wouldn't be there to support me.
I'd be there in spirit. I'd be somewhere in a soundproof place somewhere. Me and Elon Musk would be flying the moon or something that day. I'll be busy, But so real quick, Shenandoah Valley campaign. I mean, this battle, like I said, was the big final push. It was the really third independent campaign, in this case, by U.S. Grant while he was doing his drive to Richmond in that Overland campaign, right? And all three of the campaigns that kind of affected the valley, they kind of all sort of go together a little bit. Mm-hmm. You got that Lynchburg campaign early with Battle of Newmarket and Piedmont and Lynchburg, Field of Lost Shoes, the whole deal. And then you had that Jubal early campaign we talked about when we did Monocacy. He wants to take out the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad and threaten Washington. You have Monocacy, second Kernstown, with jewelers. Do you have that one?
Yeah.
This is what we're going to talk about tonight. This is Phil Sheridan's Valley campaign that runs from August to October of 1864. Now, at this time, Grant and Lincoln, they were worried about Jubal Early, who'd been let loose in the valley just to do Beetlejuice crap. That's what he was told to basically do, right?
When he's got John Brown Gordon with him too, who's an extremely
Yeah.
aggressive general, as we saw at Monocacy and all
Mhm.
that. So he's got him with him, and that's playing into this too.
This is like letting your two drunkest friends into the city
It is.
unsupervised, is what this is, right? So he's also going to be threatening Washington, D.C., but really what he wants to do is take the focus away from Grant's assault on Petersburg and Richmond. He wants to kind of draw people around. So end of July 1864, I think was the 30th, you have Early, his rebels under John McCausland, that fun lover we talked about, the episode of Monocacy.
Yep.
They're going to burn Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And if the smell is still there, apparently, because it still stinks. But, they burn, 500 buildings. They cause $250,000 and $750,000 in damage. And they really, and that's all because the town, they don't want to pay the ransoms, right? And they're going to, so this is the stuff they're doing. So Early's rampage on Chambersburg was kind of retaliation for all the stuff that General David Hunter did on his burning rampage, including burning VMI, the Virginia Military Institute.
Yep.
As I'd like to say, VMI if you're nasty, right? but that's what. So it's what happens in this valley. It gets really personal and ugly with these guys, right?
Well, it's also near the end of the war too. That it's these are guys that are fighting to the last of it, right? Like some of them have been in the war since the beginning. And the other thing to remember too is like the 1864 election.
Right. But after Chambersburg is burned, Grant says, I'm done with Hunter. I'm done. See ya. Gone, right? August 1st, 1864, Grant replaces Hunter with General Phillip Sheridan, right? And former cavalry commander in the Army of the Potomac. And he has one job. Go beat the hell out of Early and get rid of him. That's your job, okay? Hunter actually wasn't really fired. He said, well, you can stay in charge on paper if you want. And Hunter's like, go screw, I'm out of here. So Sheridan's now in command of this army of the Shenandoah, right? And Grant and Lincoln, okay, they know that they've got this Tasmanian devil ready to be unleashed, but they have to take it slow to the thing you just mentioned a second ago, was the 1864 election. What they don't want him to do is get really crazy aggressive a la Hood in Atlanta and do something stupid around Washington right for the election that's going to screw them up, because they still weren't feeling completely confident. And I think the Monocacy battle scared the hell out of them a little bit, and they could not afford something dumb to happen where Washington gets attacked and they get sieged and something happens. So they had to tell him to kind of take it slow. And, and that's kind of what it is. And Phil Sheridan, little Phil or Fighting Phil, he's stood 5'5", born in Albany in 1831, the son of Irish immigrants. He graduates from West Point 1853, was 34th out of 52 in that class, with classmates of the aforementioned John Bell Hood Mary, as well as James Burbsy McPherson and John Schofield we talked about. But the thing about him, he was a capital S soldier. That's what he was. He was one of those dudes who was born to be a soldier, right? Valued loyalty, duty, loved everything about a soldier's life is what he was. And you can see why Lincoln and Grant really liked him.
Yeah.
And you can see why a lot of people didn't.
Oh, yeah, because he's very, very arrogant. Like Lincoln, I don't think liked him very much at first, but then started to warm up to him. But the other thing that we have going into Cedar Creek, though, to mention is that on September the 2nd, Atlanta has been captured by Sherman. This is a huge, huge thing for the North. But, you have this Valley campaign happening, and with this culminating with this Battle of Cedar Creek, but you have Union victories that have happened leading up to it as well. But you also have Sheridan wrecking the Shenandoah Valley too, which is orders from Grant. Right. Yeah.
So, Lincoln, you mentioned he didn't really like him too much. He's got a great quote about him that he says about Sheridan. He says, Sheridan was a brown, chunky little chap with not enough neck to hang him in such long arms that if his ankles itched, he could scratch them without stooping. So just imagine how that's like Dobby from Harry Potter, just described right there, right to a T, right? Yeah. After West Point, he joins the 1st U.S. Infantry, then eventually the 4th U.S. Out in California, he ends up where the girls are warm. And eventually he's going to negotiate deals with Indian tribes in the Northwest. So he doesn't
Mhm.
do the whole Mexico thing like a lot of these guys do.
No.
He has that story where he negotiated a deal with an Indian tribe called the Takelmas, where he was secretly hooking up with the chief's daughter
Yep.
while he was negotiating. So
He
that's
apparently had a
okay.
kid with that girl too.
Gonna guess the kid was short. Just gonna
Probably.
guess, right?
Yeah, he
You
apparently had
know,
a kid.
after Sumter, he goes to Missouri and he becomes a staff officer under Henry Halleck,
Yep.
and eventually a quartermaster. Can you imagine Sheridan as a quartermaster? Just think about that for a second.
He'd probably be pretty good at it.
He's like that little dude in Glory with the
Yep.
shoes. That's
Oh
how I
yeah,
imagine
that's
him.
exactly who he is. You know what else happened to him when he was in that area?
What?
That's where he got his famous horse.
That's right.
Rienzi.
Yeah.
And Rienzi's actually the story of Rienzi is that Rienzi was born near Port Huron, Michigan, which is about an hour and a half from me. It's a town that I go to quite a bit. And the citizens of Port Huron bought him for one of the guys that was going off to war. Well, this horse was very fiery, very grumpy, very headstrong, a lot like Sheridan was. And the soldier they bought him for didn't really like him too much, and it was a very reluctant relationship. So one day, the soldier was one of Sheridan's men, and Sheridan went over to the horse, and the horse and Sheridan kind of took to each other. And the guy was like, you know what? He's all yours. So Sheridan named him Rienzi after this town that they were stationed near. And just like most Civil War horse stories, the story of Sheridan and Rienzi is that the horse becomes an extension of the general's personality, and Rienzi will be with Sheridan throughout the entire Civil War. And he's going to factor into this battle in a very important way in the end. And this is kind of what makes his horse almost as famous as what he is.
I remember Yenzi. I went to Smithsonian one day, Mary.
Yep.
Saw him over there. Said hello.
He's a gigantic horse. Sheridan would have needed a stool to get up onto him.
Didn't say much, I was talking about. But Sheridan, he saw action through a lot of these battles that we've talked about. Pea Ridge under Samuel Curtis. And he was one of the ones who discovered that the corrupt soldiers selling the horses and for private money. He was one of those dudes who smelled it out and saw the whole thing. He's going to go fight places like Chickamauga, Chattanooga, and of course Stones River, which he had a really good day. We talked about that. The thing about it, he goes from captain to major general in just 6 months. Right?
He does, yep.
But the thing about him, though, okay, is he's kind of a dick, right?
He is.
He was gruff. He was profane, just demanding, unforgiving, all the attributes of a Dairy Queen employee. He just has it all. Has it all.
You almost said Duncan.
I know. I almost said Duncan.
You almost said Duncan.
Oh, I was thinking of Duncan's, but anyway. But in the valley, commanding this army to Shenandoah, like I said, his primary goal is to take out early. So he's the right guy for the right job, right? His army he gets is kind of a hybrid, kind of. It's kind of a throw-in deal. He's got some troops that are already there. He's got some that are going to be coming via train. He's got about 32,000 guys when it's all said and done, versus that early's guys of about 14,000 in that Confederate army of the Valley. So his biggest troops is the 6th Corps, which we've talked a lot about when we talk about that, the Valley. Horatio Wright, same guy who Sheridan complained about after he made Charles Champion Gilbert, who we talked last week, a major general to Perryville. He didn't like that too much, but whatever. Okay, that's Sheridan for you. The 19th Corps under William Emery, who was called Old Bricktop by his troops. That's what they called him. So that's all about. He's newly arrived from Louisiana, who recently participated with the great Nathaniel Banks in his Red River campaign. Speaking of him, another guy from Waltham we talk about, right? And first thing he needs to do, too, he's an old cavalry guy. He has to organize this new unofficial official cavalry. So this is when he kind of steps in a little bit. He puts in a guy named Alfred Torbett in charge. And it was controversial because it was another guy named William Averill, who we've talked about, outranked him. So Averill had that really shitty day at Kernstown, remember? So I think because he didn't want to put his troops in and that whole thing. So naturally, Averill gets pissed off. But Torbett gets the job. And the thing about Sheridan is he had one of those gifts for terrain. He's an old engineer type. And he, not only was he good at reading terrain, but he also had experience in the area with David Hunter and Franz Sigel and he had a curse, so he had great personal knowledge as well of the valley.
Yeah, he did. And then on the other side of things, you have Jubal Early's Army of the Valley, which we have General Stephen Ramsar, General Joseph Kershaw, General John Pegram, and General John Brown Gordon, who we have seen before in other episodes. He actually grew up near Chickamauga Creek in northern Georgia. He's a lawyer. He joined a mountaineer regiment when the war broke out. He's got little to no military training, but he's extremely aggressive, and he's going to play a huge role in this battle, right down to the planning of it. He's been at First Manassas 7 days, and Antietam. He was the guy that almost drowned in his own blood, I believe, from his wound. Gettysburg, Wilderness, and Spotsylvania. And he's also at Monocacy as well. He was the guy that had dinner with Lew Wallace a few years after the battle, and he told Lew Wallace, "You made us lose Washington." So with Early, he's been made a division commander, and he's assumed the leadership of Early's Second Corps when Early was promoted to commander of the Army of the Valley. You also have General Gabriel Wharton, and cavalry is led by a guy named Lunsford Lomax, as well as General Thomas Rosser. They have a total of 21,102 troops with them.
And we'll talk a lot about specifically Rosser here in a little while. But Sheridan, he's going to be working with a guy named Lieutenant John Meigs, who by happenstance is the son of Montgomery Meigs, speaking of quartermasters, right? And they're going to trace the roads, they're going to study the terrain, the farms, the whole deal. So first thing Sheridan's going to do is he's going to march to a place called Berryville, Virginia, which is a few miles east of Winchester, Virginia, and where he first learns that Jubal Early was encamped at a place called Bunker Hill. Not Bunker Hill, Mass. Wasn't that far. It was Bunker Hill, Virginia, right? And just a few miles to the northwest. They're kind of in the same area. And what happens is when he marches, it actually forces Early to move south to Winchester and then eventually to Fisher's Hill because he's just intimidated by the troop numbers. So all of a sudden, Sheridan has basically cleared out the lower valley without even firing a shot. So he's like, all right, well, this is going okay. Sheridan first moves to Cedar Creek, which is near Strasburg, about 20 miles south of Winchester. So they're going to kind of move around. The thing there, this is where, Sheridan's like, this is almost too easy, right? So he starts to get a little nervous, starts to get a little scared, Mary, is what happens, okay? He starts getting nervous because his scouts are reporting to him that there are Rebs in nearby Strasburg, but he didn't know what their strength was. He's like, look, they're definitely Rebs. We don't know who the hell they are. Also, Emory's 19th Corps haven't arrived yet. They're still traveling on the train from Louisiana. They made it, right? Traffic, brutal, Virginia.
Traffic is the fucking worst.
Throw in the fact that there are these nonstop rumors that James Longstreet's Corps is coming from Richmond to bail out Early. And this is an ongoing thing right up into the actual battle. So at this point, Sheridan's supply trains are going to get whacked by John Mosby.
Yeah.
And this is going to begin this crazy thing with Mosby that they're going back and forth. So most of the wagons got burned. They lost 200 troops, prisoners, as well as 600 horses lost to Mosby. Now, Sheridan had a legit hate on for John Mosby.
I don't blame him.
Right? And the reason why, he was under the impression that he was just a terrorist guerrilla, that he was not part of their actual formal Confederate army. He just had a band of thugs that was just busting shit up. And so now he loses a bunch of supplies and a bunch of troops. He's pretty pissed off. So jump ahead real quick here to August 4th. It's a little bit before the battle, so just got to set this up. Sheridan's going to get a report from U.S. Grant stating that 2 rebel divisions are marching towards him to support Early. He's still going to have a 3-to-1 manpower advantage, though, based on the intel they have. Despite this, though, Sheridan gets a little, chickens out a little bit, Mary. Gets yellow, okay? And he decides the best course of action is to fall back to Winchester. And this whole movement is being watched by Early personally, who's sitting on top of Fisher's Hill, twisting his mustache. His Dr.
I
Evil
can just
laugh,
picture him
right?
doing that too.
And Early will write, he writes, Sheridan, like his predecessors, possessed an excessive caution, which amounted to timidity. So right off the bat, he's like, cool, and other chicken shit Union general to deal with. Perfect, right? The Northern press crushed Sheridan for this. for backing away from a fight. And some of his troops did too. They were starting to wonder, this
Yep.
guy's all talk, no action here. So,
Well, that's like the Sheridan at Perryville, right? Like
yeah,
Sheridan
I
at
mean,
Perryville is not overly aggressive at all.
no, and he isn't, but I think he's cautious. I think
Yep.
he's under that guideline where he doesn't want to do anything stupid for the election. He doesn't want to piss off Lincoln. He knows that he was handpicked for this job by U.S. Grant
Yep.
personally, and he knew U.S. Grant had to listen to shit from Edwin Stanton for putting him in that position because Stanton did
Yep.
not want him in this job, and he went out on a limb for him. So I think he felt, well, I can't let him down. So for the next couple of weeks, the Rebs are kind of nipping at the army of the Shenandoah's heels at different points. What they were kind of do is hitting him here, hitting him there, because what Early wanted to do was he wanted to make Sheridan think he had more guys than he really did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're talking about a pretty good sized disadvantage manpower wise.
Yep.
The next day, Sheridan is like, well, I'm getting eviscerated in the north. I need to do something again. I have to. So he's going to move back to Berryville. This time he's going to dig in. And while he's digging in, there's Early again, sitting in Occoquan Creek. Say that 3 times quick. Just south of Winchester, and he's watching. So everything he's doing is watched. So what he wants to do is he wants to find out what the hell's going on with these rebels. How many people do they have? Are there really troops coming from Richmond? Why the hell would they? I don't know. He has a spy named Thomas Laws who somehow has some kind of connection with a woman in the town of Winchester and Rebecca Wright. Okay.
Yeah, she's a Quaker Unionist, apparently.
Right. So she's going to find out the scoop of Early's plans. We don't want to know how, but she kind of figures out what they are. But more importantly, what she finds out and what she tells Laws, who tells Sheridan, there's no one coming. This is it. Not only that, he also learned that not only was no troops coming, but he had a report that Kershaw's division was going to be sent back to Richmond. So this moment of Early's vulnerability leads to the Third Battle of Winchester. That's directly what causes it, right?
It does.
So this is on September 19th, 1864. It's going to drop the Rebs back to Fisher's Hill. Sheridan is going to hit Early again, which is going to create the Battle of Fisher's Hill. And the Rebs are going to fall all the way back to Waynesboro. And what that does for the most part, the valley's now wide open. It's completely clear. So now Sheridan felt now is his time to get his revenge. And this is when Sheridan becomes enemy number one in the valley. There's no Rebs to stop him. He's pissed off. He's going to begin a vicious scorched earth policy that is still today called the burning, right? And it's something that does not get enough attention and is somehow overshadowed by Sherman, what he did in Georgia. But as you study this, by October 6th, 1864, his burning has destroyed 2,000 barns, 70 grain mills, and 3,000 sheep are gone. Sheridan's going to write about this. When this is completed, the valley will have but little left for man or beast.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Grant wanted him to do. And he's doing this before Sherman has even started his march to the sea. That's the thing to remember with this. Is Sherman hasn't even started his march to the sea, and that's what we focus on, is this march to the sea. This is happening before that.
There are troop stories they talk about where, you mentioned before how like Sherman in Georgia, the stories, well, did he, didn't he? He gave us orders, don't do this. There are stories where Sheridan is sitting with his feet up, smoking a cigar in wagons, watching the shit burn, laughing. And this is documented. So you can see why people go to the valley sometime and mention Sheridan. I'm telling you,
exactly. I think it's I think you go there and it's just as big of a thing as what the March to the Sea is in Georgia, or kind of in this Civil War history, right? Like we always focus on the March to the Sea. We don't focus on this great burning that has happened. But this is what, Grant's strategy at this point is to employ these scorched earth tactics to end the Civil War. And Lincoln has finally agreed to that. So you have Grant, Meade, and Butler going against Lee's army in Northern Virginia. In the Western Theater, you have Sherman in Georgia. He's captured Atlanta, and he's just sitting there right now. It's October. He's about to start his march to the sea a month later. And then you have Banks down. He's going to try and capture Mobile Bay. So you have kind of these 3 different things happening, and 2 of them are going to become, one of them already has become Sheridan, and the next one, Sherman, is going to become scorched earth to help end the Civil War. And that's where we are at right now as we're going into the Battle of Cedar Creek.
Well, the thing about it though is, just finish up this burning thing here,
Yeah.
okay? People don't like having their neighborhood burned. Historically, they just don't.
No, they
Even
don't.
today, right? So this enrages the valley, and still enrages him today, as a matter of fact.
Hmm.
He also used this opportunity to get back at Mosby because he
He
was still
does.
pissed at Mosby, right?
Yeah.
So he had a policy where if anybody in John Mosby's partisan rangers who were captured were to be hanged without a trial immediately. That was the deal. He saw them as nothing more than cutthroats and robbers. At Fort Royal, Union troops caught and murdered three of Mosby's men. They were taken behind a barn and shot as soon as they were caught. Predictably, this put Mosby in a freaking rage, and he vowed revenge on Sheridan.
Hmm.
And what happens is, a couple weeks later, what happens? He catches up. John Meggs is riding around,
Yep.
and he sees three troopers up ahead of him and rides up to see who they are. Guess who they are? They're Mosby's guys. Mosby's guys recognize them. What do? They to John Meggs, they kill him.
Hmm.
So John Meggs, the son of Montgomery Meggs, and close friend of Sheridan, is going to be killed, and that's going to cause all kinds of crap. So October 9th, 1864, Jewel Early, who's getting a lot of pressure from Sheridan's actions, begins to pursue him, and he's going to send his cavalry under the aforementioned Thomas Rosser you mentioned
Yep.
to harass Torbert's horsemen. And Sheridan told Torbert, whip the rebel cavalry or get whipped yourself.
Yep. And that's so, and as you said, Early's getting a lot of pressure right now. And on October the 12th, Lee sends him a letter that says, "You better move against him and endeavor to crush him. I do not think Sheridan's infantry or cavalry numerically is as large as what you suppose." So Early's got this kind of pressure going on. And the one thing to remember is that the valley has been burned by this point. So any food that Early's men are going to get, it's become a lot tougher. And as we're going to see by Cedar Creek, these men have gone a few days without a meal, and their clothes are all tattered, and the army's not in great shape. But you have Lee on October the 12th putting a lot of pressure on Early to, like, you need to fuck this guy up and get rid of him, you know? And so, like, Sheridan at this point, he's set up at Cedar Creek, and he's told his subordinates that they have to provide for their own security. And this involves using pickets deployed well forward of their camps as well. And the one that doesn't have that, who's we're going to talk about him in a little bit, is General Cook. Doesn't exactly take this advice. But we will discuss that in a little while when we get to the battle.
No. So we'll go. I'm not going to mention Tom's Brook. That was the cavalry battle that happened here. So we'll go past that. But Sheridan, by the time that October 12th, October 9th, right around there, both rosters going to get beaten up pretty hard.
Yep.
By the Union cavalry, by Torbert. It's going to be called the Woodstock races. They called it, how fast the Roster's men ran. So now Sheridan's pretty confident now that the Rebs are driven out, and he decides he's going to go back. He's going to bivouac to where you just said, near Cedar Creek. So what he's got the 19th Corps, who have arrived under William Emery, who's going to be on the right near a place called Belle Grove Plantation, right? The 8th Corps, the Army of West Virginia under George Crook, is going to be in the Heights on the Union left, and the 6th Corps under Horatio Wright was in the process of being sent back to Petersburg temporarily to Grant at this point. So this troop movement going back and forth, and Early, sitting at New Market, which he was this time, gets wind that Horatio Wright in that 6th Corps, who has tormented him for months, might be leaving, right? So he says, well, this might be my opportunity to get revenge on Sheridan. So I'm going to move to Fisher's Hill again, trying to get Sheridan to hit him. And this is right around October 13th. So the next day, all this intrigue continues to go back and forth. Sheridan gets a telegram from Edwin Stanton, asking him to return to Washington for a quick meeting, right? Now, he's figuring Early's in no position to attack, right? So he's going to book that trip on the Acela, but he's going to do so. But before he decides to go, he does something very smart, which is he calls back Wright's 6th Corps. So he brings him back now, right? Early wants Sheridan to attack him as soon as possible because he wants to hit him, right? So he does that fake telegram where he sends
with the
a telegram.
wigwag station.
Lieutenant General Early, be ready to an attack as soon as my forces arrive. Love, James Longstreet. I think it was a love that gave away. Just saying, right? So needless to say, it was a fake. It was a fake telegram.
It was,
But
which Early admitted to in the 1890s that he had written it, the message, and sent it under the older code that the rebels knew the Yankees had broken. And what he wanted to do was discourage Sheridan from sending troops to Petersburg. He just
right.
wanted to discourage all of that. So he's I think one of the reasons he's using Longstreet is because Sheridan has already fought against Longstreet before. And Sheridan's belief of Longstreet is that he's a very formidable enemy. He's seen him at
Well, he
Chickamauga.
was. I mean,
Yeah, and he saw, like, Sheridan saw firsthand at Chickamauga what Longstreet was capable of. So of course, if you're going to put one person in Sheridan's head, it's going to be James Longstreet. So I mean, this is I don't know. I got to give kudos to Early for this little ruse that he does here with Sheridan.
Might as well. I mean,
like Jesus.
Sheridan's his defense. He didn't fall for it.
No. But you know what's still in the back of his mind is he's going to Washington. It's still like, oh shit, that could happen.
He's got to go to right. So he's going to proceed to Washington. But the thing about it is he does smell a rat. He thinks something's up. So he kind of does the whole, hey, what's up, Edwin? Shit, look, it's 7:00 already. I need to go, right? So he goes quick. So he's going to cut the meeting short. He's going to rush back from Washington from Stanton. He's going to get back to Winchester on October 18th, right? He's going to stay at the house of a tobacco merchant named Lloyd Logan, which the house is still there, Mary. If you're curious to see it, it's still right there. You can see it. It's at Sheridan's headquarters, 1864. He sends word to Horatio right at Cedar Creek now for an update. And he gets reported back that all was clear. And he's going to plan on doing some recon in the morning on the 19th to see what's up. So feeling secure, Sheridan put on his kid-size Speedy pajamas. And he crawled,
Same size I wear.
Yeah, exactly. 5'5", and crawled into bed, probably a race car bed, at Logan's house in Winchester. Okay. So now he's going to wake up on the 19th of October early. He's going to get a knock on the door by a staff person, one of his officers, who's reporting the sound of distant artillery near Cedar Creek. Now, he wakes up and goes, "Oh, okay. You know what? Nah, that's just Wright's artillery recon. Whatever. I know this is up." But he doesn't go back to bed. He's like, "Shit. You know what? I'm gonna stay up. And I'm probably gonna need to get Rienzi ready, right?"
Yep.
So by 9:00, he's leaving. He's on the go. He's going down to Cedar Creek. He's with a guy named Lieutenant John Forsyth, Major Sandy Forsyth, no relation. What chance of that? Captain James O'Keefe, and a couple of engineers. Along the way, they're going to get to Mill Creek. They're going to pick up 300 troopers from the 17th Pennsylvania who serve as escorts. So he's got a little convoy. He's got his posse now, right?
Yep.
And what he's noticing is, as he's riding, the artillery is getting louder. And so Sheridan's like, "What the hell?" He's like, "Okay, I expect that this is recon, but this doesn't sound right."
Yeah.
He literally stops his horse, probably to get help down, right? He climbs off the horse. He puts his ear to the ground to listen for the vibrations like an Indian would. And he's listening because he had experience in the West. So he probably picks up that way. And he's like, this is not good. So moments later, he looks up and he sees hundreds of fleeing U.S. troops riding in a panic towards him. He quickly realizes that something strange is afoot at the Circle K at this point, but he doesn't know what. And that's because of the stuff that was going on the night before with Jubal Early.
Exactly. And so just to set that up, what happens is October 17th, 18, General Gordon, their engineer Hotchkiss, Major Robert Hunter, General Clement Evans, they go up one of the mountains near Cedar Creek to take a look at the Union position. And they are at the Confederate Signal Corps position at Signal Knob. Early doesn't go with them because his arthritis had flared up. So there was no way he was getting up a mountain that day. So this area they were at overlooks Strasburg, Fort Royal, and where the Army of the Shenandoah is camped out. And Gordon and Hotchkiss determine that the Union left flank is the only place to attack. This is where Crook's men are. And they determine to attack there because Union cavalry are not going to be in that area. They're guarding the fords along Cedar Creek and the North Fork of the Shenandoah River. When Gordon observes is General Crook's left flank, and Crook has not followed Sheridan's guidance in putting out pickets far enough in front. And what Gordon says of this, I could see I could see distinctly the three colors of trimmings on the jackets, respectively, of infantry, artillery, and cavalry. And so he's right there looking at them, and Hotchkiss sketches a map of this. So on their way back, Hotchkiss and Gordon are like, yeah, let's do this. Let's attack these guys here. And they decide that surprise is the best. And we're talking about a very, aggressive commander here in Gordon, that he knows he's outnumbered, which is, again, going against the rules of war. You're attacking a foe outnumbered. And he's also going to divide his army to do it. But he feels that they have the advantage because he thinks that, knowing that Sheridan's already had a win at 3rd Winchester, Fisher's Hill, and Tom's Brooks, they're not going to be expecting shit from them. They're going to think that their army's not in a condition to do that. So Early holds a council of war, and Gordon is like, let's fucking do this. Let's attack. But General John Pegram speaks up and says, no, I think we need to attack the right flank. And Early's like, no. So we're not going to do that. Early's got a choice at this point. Leave the area to replenish his supplies or attack. He's already got the pressure from Lee, but he's already got Gordon, who's already like, yeah, let's do it. Like, Gordon is really, really aggressive. So Early chooses to attack, and he feels that he can use the surprise to his advantage. What this reminded me of was Pea Ridge, in a way.
Yeah, I mean,
just this whole, like, we're going to divide the army and we're going to get these fuckers and we're going to, but I mean, it goes a little bit better, I think, at first than what Pea Ridge did. And because of Sheridan's total war on the valley, Early's troops are hungry. They've been robbed of food and all that. But Early's he's got to take that risk because he's feeling that pressure. And I'm sure Gordon is like, yeah, let's do this,
But one thing Early does is his plan is pretty good, right?
It
Even
is,
with
yeah.
less people. He's going to form, 3 columns, John Brown Gordon's column with divisions that are Ramsey, you mentioned, Pegram, you mentioned, and Clement Evans. They're going to start to march towards Cedar Creek at 8 o'clock that night. Gabriel Wharton and Joseph Kershaw's division is going to leave at 1 o'clock in the morning on the 19th with 300 horsemen from Rosser's cavalry division, and they're going to target that Belle Grove. And the reason why they want to target Belle Grove is they think that's where Sheridan's headquarters is, and they think that's where Sheridan is, and they want Sheridan personally.
Gordon,
right?
It's Gordon who wants him as a prisoner.
Right, and he wasn't going to. He would have gone up the spout if they caught him. Right. Lumford Lomax, you mentioned him earlier, the cavalry guy. He's going to cover potential Union escape routes. So they kind of have all their ducks in a row at this moment. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, with fog covering the battlefield, Gordon's column is going to cross that icy river, the Shenandoah, and he's going to hit that Union left under Crook, like you mentioned, specifically right in the face of future President Rutherford B. Hayes' division, who takes the brunt of it right at the beginning, sending them running in their underwear in the rear in a panic, literally. Right?
Whoosh. A little bit of Savannah action there going on.
I don't think that's a pretty sight, by the way. Rutherford B. Hayes in his underwear running. There's a sight for you. 19th Corps under Emory is on the Union center, right? He hears the attack and sees Crook's men fleeing and decides to change his battle line to face Gordon, right?
Yeah.
The problem is when he does this, he opens up a gap in his line by turning the way he does. And that's going to open the door for Gabriel Wharton to exploit coming from the west. So they're moving troops and they're creating gaps, right? Emory's going to do his best to settle Crook's men down and get them to stop running and reform, especially the brigade of Stephen Thomas, guys from Connecticut, New York, Vermont, right? They're going to reform and they're going to slow the Rebs down just long enough for the supply trains at Sheridan's headquarters to get the hell out.
Yeah,
right?
Most of them do.
So this is First Manassas all over again for a minute. They're trying to get their shit out, right? The 6th Corps is now fighting under James Ricketts, and they're going to set up a defensive line near Belle Grove Plantation. So by 7 o'clock in the morning, the 6th Corps has got a pretty good lineup set up, right? They have divisions under Frank Wheaton. Oh, God.
Yeah.
George Getty.
Team Wheaton.
and J. Warren Kiefer. Now, Kiefer's going to get hit right in the face, his men by Gordon.
Yeah.
And he'll do the same thing to Wheaton's division, who admittedly was missing one of his 3 brigades. He didn't wait a little bit of a break. He wasn't fully strength, but they did get him on the run. And we'll have some fun with old Frank Wheaton, but he gave him pretty good, guess, right? And he was on Kiefer's left. Now, this is where George Getty comes in.
Yeah. And he's So Getty sees them starting to retreat and he's like, shit, I got to do something. So just quick about Getty. Nobody really talks about him too much, but he's born in 1819 in Georgetown, West Point. He graduates 15th out of 42 in 1840. His classmates include Sherman, Thomas, and Ewell, and Bushrod Johnson as well. Bushrod, we talked about last week. Thomas, oh no, we've talked about him many times before too. He's involved in the Mexican-American War, and he's buried at Arlington National Cemetery, which I didn't know. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's another grave I need to go visit next time I'm there. But anyway, he sees the Middletown Cemetery. And so he and his troops head to the cemetery, and he says that they ignore the universal confusion and dismay. Crowds of officers and men, some shod and some barefoot, many of them coatless and hatless, all rushing wildly to the rear. It was a sight that would have demoralized the old guard of the first Napoleon. So Getty gets his men into position in this horseshoe-shaped works in the cemetery, and he orders his 4,000 men to hold their fire until the rebels are running up this slope toward them until they're 30 yards away. And they fire at them, and this sends Pegram's men back. And then Getty chases them across Meadowbrook, and then Early orders 2 more assaults. Pegram goes in again, and so does Wharton, and both fail to dislodge Getty. So Getty is holding his own right now with this, while everybody else is retreating back, and he's holding it. And we're going to see that by him doing this, it is going to be to the Union's advantage by the time Sheridan gets there.
Well, it does, because you know what happens? Early focuses all of his artillery on Getty in the cemetery.
Yep.
He thinks it's the whole Sixth Corps. He doesn't realize it's just Getty. Getty's division was, they held the ground against 4 rebel divisions here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it put the focus, it was almost like the Hornet's Nest, right? It's Shiloh.
Yep.
It put the focus on the Hornet's Nest and took the eyes off the rest of the battlefield. So this was the fire that Sheridan heard as he was riding up. This is what he was hearing. So all this fire, the noise coming in from Winchester in this ride, he's passing all these Union wounded guys. He begins to try to rally them. He yells, "Come on, boys, God damn them. We'll make coffee out of Cedar Creek tonight," which sounds gross, by the way, but that's what he said, okay?
Yeah.
And the troops actually stopped and turned around. Now, one colonel looked at Sheridan and said, "The army is whipped." To which Sheridan responded back, "No, sir, you are whipped, but the army is not." I don't know if that was actually what he said, but that's what led you what they said he said.
And you know who starts spreading word that Sheridan's coming back is McKinley.
And McKinley, right? And so the thing was funny was that at this point, it's this 300-man entourage, these horsemen, they can't get down the road anymore because the roads are clogged with troops and wagons. So what they end up doing, Sheridan's riding party ends up getting off the road from it and riding through a real green field on the way. Nowhere if the grass was real or not, by the way. Who the hell knows, right? But anyway, it
was Kentucky bluegrass, as I discovered.
I'll defer to you on that one. You must have been AstroTurf, and I don't know, by the way. But McKinley, you mentioned that story. McKinley sees Sheridan's flag and starts yelling at everybody that Sheridan's here. So and they're all cheering, they're getting fired up. Further down the road, Sheridan runs into the rear guard of Wheaton's division, who remain back, and at this point, we're holding that line. Now, eventually, he's going to find Getty's rear guard, and he's going to meet Alfred Torbett, that cavalry commander who he handpicked. And he told Sheridan, "My God, I'm glad you've come." That's what he said.
Yeah.
I always love how people talk like this. Who the hell knows? But what was funny was the Union troops who saw Sheridan instantly became fired up. Now, just remember, Sheridan's a dick. He's grumpy. He's angry, right? But the troops are happy to see him. Major Hazard Stevens from Chantilly.
Yes, I was hoping you'd mention him.
Right? He says his quote is the instantly a mighty revulsion of feeling took place and confidence returned at the bound. Okay, so everybody was happy. So Sheridan eventually is going to keep moving forward. He's going to find his corps commanders, George Crook, William Emery, and Horatio Wright. And he asked them, "Hey, what the hell are you guys doing in the rear? It's great to see you, but where are you?" And they were covering the retreat, to which Sheridan said, "Retreat? Hell, we'll be back in our camps tonight." So it was probably right around this point when he started to get the actual details of what Gordon did that morning. I have to imagine the corps commanders probably told him, "Okay, here's what happened. We got pants down. Crook in his underwear is running. It was a bad sight, right?"
And everybody's like, "Where's Getty?"
Exactly, right? So by 10:30 in the morning, Sheridan is on the field. He's right there.
Yeah.
And it was just by coincidence, because the Confederates didn't know that Sheridan wasn't there. Right around the time Sheridan gets it, guess what happens? Everything goes quiet.
It's early.
Breaking early
To
stops.
stop. Oh,
And they call it the halt. And this
yep.
halt is going to become like the most controversial aspect of the Battle of Civil War from a rebel perspective, as they all took turns blaming each other. So,
Yeah. Do you want to know what it's
early,
like? It's like when a rain delay
please.
comes in
Oh,
a baseball
really?
game.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
It's like
So,
a rain
okay.
delay in the 2016 World Series. I'm not bitter about it though, but that's kind of
What's
what
it
this
like
is
to
like.
lose a World Series? That must be weird. Anyway, we'll talk about that.
Fucking rain
Anyway,
delay.
so Early's going to blame it. He doesn't blame it on the rain. He blames it on two mystery U.S. cavalry divisions that he thinks are on his right flank, which they
Yeah.
really weren't. And he realizes it, but then he admits afterwards, the Yankees got whipped, but we got scared. That's what he said, which sounds a lot to me like, Joe Hooker got lost confidence in Joe Hooker. I mean, that's what that reminded me of, right?
That's exactly what it sounds like. And it's so when this happens, like Early and Gordon have a disagreement. This is around 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30, right when Sheridan's getting there. And Gordon tells Early that he can send Carter's artillery to bombard the Sixth Corps. And Early's like, nah, they'll go directly. And Gordon's like, no, they're not going to go unless they're driven from the field, dude. Like, what the fuck? And Early rebukes that too. And then this is when Gordon, this is how he felt about that. My heart went into my boots. If one more heavy blow had been delivered with unhesitating energy, with Jacksonian confidence and vigor, and with the combined power of every heavy gun and every exultant soldier of Early's army, the battle would have ended in one of the most complete and inexpensive victories ever won in the Civil War. That's what he had to say to it. I have to say I relate to that because that's exactly how I feel about the 2016 World Series. Had it not been rain delayed.
Let it go. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so
but the other one that gets, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I guess the thing is just by tapping his, while Early froze, okay, Sheridan was reinforcing his lines, right? So he anchors the rest of Emory and Wright's division to Getty's line, right? And then what he does, and this was probably his best move, he puts George Custer's cavalry division on the Union right. So at this point, he's got the line set up, and he's going to jump on his horse Rienzi. He's going to ride, holding a spectacular hat way above his head as he rides the line while his soldiers cheered. And what's so funny was, like I said before, as unlovable and as tough as Sheridan was, he brought confidence, very much like Winfield Scott Hancock at Gettysburg. It's that same type of leadership mentality. So Major Aldous Walker of the 8th Vermont is in Thomas's brigade. He says, upon Sheridan riding that line, no more doubt existed. We were perfectly and unconditionally safe, and every man knew it. So all of a sudden, this mass skedaddle turns into a we got this situation. So by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the Rebs are still stalling. And as quiet as my house on a Friday night when no one calls, there's just nothing happening, right? So
speaking of not getting over things.
Oh, stop. Whatever. Hey, well, the phone, when the phone doesn't ring, I know it's you. So it's okay. That's not a long story.
5 times.
Jesus. But Sheridan's going to use this time to question rebel prisoners. He's not just going to sit around, okay? And he's going to learn he's going to learn one valuable piece of information that he really wants to know, okay? He wants to know what happened in the 2016. No, he wants to know, is Longstreet here? Is he coming? And the rebel prisoners say, nah, he ain't here.
And he's like, good.
So he's like, okay. So now he's rested and he's relaxed.
Yeah.
He's gonna crash a little bit. His staff said he was on the grass, laying on his side, centerfold style, with his head being rested by his arm and waiting for the rebel attack.
He's like George Costanza. He's probably got his hat on.
That's what he's doing, right? And you did say hat on. Again, enunciate, okay? He's sitting there just relaxing. That's literally exactly how he was resting at that point. So 4 o'clock, Sheridan is going to get sick of waiting. He's going to say, the hell with this. I want to attack. He's going to order his troop commanders to move, his corps commanders, rather. Crook on the left, Wright in the middle, and Emory on the right. And they're all aiming for that rebel right flank that's held by Gordon's division, who was so spread out at this point, they literally had one man for every 30 feet of ground.
Yeah.
That's how much gaps there were, right? So by now, Early has wasted 6 hours, 6 hours, while Sheridan has all this time to reform his entire army. So
Yep.
they're going to hit hard. Um, and at this point, Mary, he's riding on his second horse, Breckenridge, by the way. He's
Yeah.
traded horses but he had to call him Bullpen, to go get the
Well,
his new
Rienzi's
horse.
Rienzi got him all the way
No.
from Winchester.
Oh,
Like, was it Winchester
he
to?
was. Yeah, he was a long
Yeah.
ride. So he's sitting there waiting for Custer to begin the next phase of the attack. So he's going to have Crooks, Wright, and Emory hit, and then once they're engaged, he's going to send old George Armstrong Custer around the right flank, and he's going to cause Beetlejuice problems, is what he's going to do, right?
Big time.
So what's funny about this is right around this time, Custer, who hadn't seen Sheridan yet at this battle,
this story. Yeah.
so he runs up to him, and apparently Sheridan is not a hugger. Apparently he's not, right? He runs up to him and throws his arms around him, and and just is so happy to see him.
He kisses him too.
Right? And Sheridan looks at him and goes, "What in the friggin' hell?" He jumps on his horse, and he just in disgust and rides away from Custer, which is how you can picture that happening literally with Custer.
He eventually forgave him for it, though. But
he does. Whatever. But in the Confederate side, Ramseur in Kershaw's division, they're trying to slow down this onslaught now, and they're able to get behind a couple of stone walls to give them a little bit of cover, and it kind of created like a stalemate, right? Instead of the Union pushing forward, they all kind of stalled, and they were just going back and forth. This is when Custer comes in. So this is just picture like a friggin' movie. Custer's going to ride around the rebel right flank and send the Rebs running, Howard style, to the rear at this point, right? He's going to, because it's the last thing they expected at this point was here comes a bunch of horsemen. General Gordon described this fleeing by saying they were like clods of clay under a pelting rain. That's how he described it, apparently. So,
and the suburb commands crumbled to pieces.
It does. Unfortunately, the one guy who didn't run was Stephen Dodson Ramseur, who's going to continue to sit back and he's going to fight, is what he's going to do.
Yeah, and he ends up getting mortally wounded here. He's 27 years old. He's the youngest general in the Confederate Army. And when he's wounded, he's got a white flower pinned to his jacket to celebrate the birth of his daughter, which he had just found out about that morning.
Yeah, he just finds out about it, puts a flower on his shirt, for honor her, a white flower, and he's going to be killed, shot in the chest, ironically. He's never gonna see her. So
no.
And Rams, of course, Gettysburg fame, big North Carolina.
He'll die later at Belgrove Plantation.
Yeah. So the Rebs eventually by 5:30, the Rebs are out, and this is just about over for this battle for the Rebs. The Union cavalry is going to chase them into the night. After the battle, Early is going to write to Lee, and he's going to write, "Nothing saved us. The state of things was distressing and mortifying beyond measure." Okay. Back at Belgrove, the Union troops were literally dancing around a bonfire, probably the Macarena, I'd imagine.
Oh, God.
Okay.
And they had more reason to dance after Custer got back and told Sheridan that he'd managed to recapture 48 guns. He
does. He grabs Sheridan, this time around the waist. Okay, so this no shame at this point. And Phil must have been in a much better mood because he just laughed, right? Mm-hmm. And Custer yelled, "By God, Phil, we've cleaned them out." So they must have been like, "Holy crap, we did this." General Emory of the 19th Corps, who was 20 years older than young Sheridan, he wrote, "The young man has made a great name for himself today." So everybody in the Union Army is loving him. Sheridan becomes a national hero for what he did, and because what he did was considered miraculous at the time.
Yep.
He rallied a beaten army with his own personality and secured a last-minute victory that was rarely seen in U.S. history in a lot of ways. Grant was thrilled because he's like, "Thank God I handpicked this guy," right?
Yeah.
So Grant, who, as you know, Mary, does not pass out compliments too often.
No, he does not.
He says, "Turning what bid a fair to be a disaster into glorious victory stamped Sheridan as one of the ablest generals." Okay. Mm-hmm. That quote was probably a kick in the nuts to Edward Stanton, saying, "Oh, by the way, I was right."
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Lincoln, he's going to pull out his old quill. He's going to write a letter to Sheridan. He's going to write, tendering to you all the thanks of a nation for the months of operations in the Shenandoah Valley, and especially the splendid work on October 19th, 1864. So everybody loves Raymond at this point, right? Everyone's going to be loving Sheridan. To a point, he's become a national hero.
He has.
And a poet named Thomas Buchanan Reed is going to write a poem called Sheridan's Ride that went viral in the North. And this ride, it talks about his ride from Winchester to Cedar Creek, basically from this horse's perspective, right? After the poem, Sheridan's going to rename Rienzi Winchester due to the poem's line, Winchester 20 miles away. And then Grant is going to reward Sheridan by making him a major general, not just in the volunteer army, but in the regular army. So he's moved his career is on the rocket ship to the moon now. His career for Sheridan.
Yeah, and it's just funny to go back to that poem that a lot of people know that horse as Winchester, and that became his second name. And that's what, if you go to the Smithsonian, you'll see that the name is Winchester on there. But Sheridan in his memoirs writes, "I always knew him as Rienzi." So even though sometimes you referred to him as Winchester, he still the original name would always be Rienzi, and that's how Sheridan knew him. But this spurred not only, this poem spurring not only Sheridan forth into fame, which the battle did that too, but his horse has this equal amount of fame too. And there's that famous picture of them riding together and all that. And it's just, and I think in some ways too, like Sheridan's confidence that you see in this ride to Winchester, which is like something, or ride to Cedar Creek from Winchester, which is like something out of a movie, like all the stuff he's saying, like, we're going to be in their camps or we're going to be in hell. Like, I don't think he's doing it just to rally his troops. He's doing it to rally himself, to give himself the confidence, because he knows if he's seen all his retreating men, and he's like, my God, if I lose my shit, if I'm like, we've lost this. So I think he brings in this kind of confidence, not just for his men, but for himself too, that if he's riding along and he's being confident, they're going to follow him. And it is like a complete turnaround, from this brilliant, it was a brilliant it was a brilliant plan that Gordon had.
I mean, this is the same guy who his troops would kind of question if he was a coward just a few months before. So
exactly,
he really win them back quickly. If you ever go to Washington, D.C. again, Mary, you'll see a statue in DuPont Circle of him, of Sheridan and Rienzi, right? He's got 5 counties named after him in the country. He's got 5 cities named after Sheridan. So the alternate side of the coin is Jubal Early with this one. So Cedar Creek is the beginning of the end for Jubal Early.
It is.
Now he's gonna double down after Cedar Creek by getting pounded by Custer on March 2nd, 1865 at Petersburg, and Lee's finally had enough and he freaking fires him. What was great about this though, Early was so enamored with Robert E. Lee that after he got fired, he took his discharge letter, his termination letter, framed it and put it on the wall. And anybody who came to visit him, he showed him that letter. It was one of his prized possessions in his entire life, was this letter being fired by Robert E. Lee. And that's just the way, that's just, again, but.
In post-battle, he blames his subordinates. So he blames Gordon. And Gordon was known to embellish post-Civil War and kind of put things in a better spin for him. But, the one thing that kind of plays against Early in this is Rosser does go to Early at around the same time Gordon had, at around 10:30, and been like, can we attack again? And Early told Rosser the same thing. No, you fucking can't. We've got them. So Rosser wanted to attack too. And the other excuse that Early used to Lee for them not attacking was he was like, my troops are ransacking the camps.
Well, that was the thing too. And we kind of skirted by this when we were talking about that too, is these troops, there was nothing. I mean, now a lot of it because that burning. So you can sit there and say, well, maybe Early screwed this up, but maybe Sheridan, by taking all the supplies and everything out of the area and burning it, when they went to those camps, when they rushed through, they stopped at every tent and found every bit of food they possibly could. And at that point, you got a hungry guy in the cold. It was icy and crappy. You weren't going to get them going. It's like a hungry dog. They're going to eat, and that's exactly what happened. But the halts, the fatal halts I've heard it referred to as, that cannot be underestimated. Where Jubal Early had an undermanned army, had a real chance to drive them back, heading back towards Winchester again. It was a dance back and forth. But because of what happened there by him halting for those 6 hours. It was just that he was writing his own death sentence, and he sat. A lot of it was on him. He admitted before that they got scared, and why they did, who knows? Because the irascible Jubal Early, he ballsed out. He really did,
Yeah. I
unfortunately,
mean,
and he.
I get it with like maybe he was reading his men and thinking, oh, they're tired, they're starving, they've been on the go since 8 o'clock the night before. But then you have somebody like Gordon who's very aggressive saying one more push and we've got them. And who knows if that would have been the case, right? Like, what if he had listened to Gordon and Rosser and let them go in? Who knows? Like the soldiers might have been able to rally back and do it, but we'll never know. I know Gordon doesn't get seen in a very good light in this just because he tends to embellish history and stuff. But in some, like, say what you will about him, he's got a brilliant battle plan here. But I think in some ways, this is like kind of like a rain delay. It's like, shit, we're slowing down troops that are ready to go, kind of thing. And
No,
it is a fatal halt.
no, what this battle does, I think it really shows the personalities of these guys. Guys like
Yeah.
George Custer, and guys like obviously Phil Sheridan, guys like Jubal Early,
Mm-hmm.
guys like John Brown Gordon. All these guys, it really shows them prototypical of what they were. Joseph Kershaw, all of them, and so it really puts the whole thing into place. Plus, you got a couple of future U.S. presidents involved in this
You
one,
do.
with
Yeah.
McKinley and
Hayes and
Rutherford B. Hayes
McKinley.
and McKinley. And it's just one of those things where uh, it really kind of seals and puts a bow on the valley, right? It
It
finishes that
does.
whole finish that whole thing off. And what it really does too is it really, if we've talked before about Monocacy and Atlanta, this one was the final slam dunk for Lincoln in the election of '64. This was it, because he was not going to lose after this. You got the
Yeah.
success going on in Richmond. You got the Overland campaign doing its thing, getting Lee pinned down. Now you force Early away from the valley, away from Washington, and now it's just a matter of time. So,
Yeah.
so this is a battle that I don't want to say it's understudied, because a lot of people study this one, but I think it's very underappreciated when you look at the Valley campaign, and everything that went on in 1864, which tends to get overshadowed by Grant. But this is one that I think tells a really huge story, because what it does, it makes Grant's life a lot easier by not having to worry about Early at this
Yeah.
point. It takes
And
him off the dance floor, and that's pretty much the end of it.
Yep, and it makes Lincoln's life a lot easier too going into the 1864 election. And we talked before about Ramsar being the the tragic death on the side of the Confederates, 27 years old. He's just had a daughter. These Union soldiers like Sheridan, Merritt, Custer, Captain Henry DuPont are coming to pay their respects to him. But on the Union side, there is another soldier that passes away that I know that you know a lot about, and that's Lowell, right?
I mean, I think Charles Russell Lowell is a sad one, because he's one that, he's killed in this battle, and he's somebody who had gigantic post-war political
Mm-hmm.
ramifications. So you think about guys like this, and there's a lot of sad stories. I mean, the U.S. had twice as many casualties as the Confederates in this one,
Yep.
about 5,600 to about 3,000 or so for the Rebs. So on paper, casualty-wise, the Union took their lumps, but strategically, um, this was one that was certainly Sheridan's best moment. When we were doing Stones River, we talked about, was that his best moment? But no, Cedar Creek is clearly Sheridan's best moment for a million different reasons. But um, we won't talk about the rest of Sheridan's career. We'll save those for other podcast episodes. But I think what this battle did is made his britches very big
Mm-hmm.
going forward. And I think it alienated him with a lot of different people. He kind of became a little Napoleon in a lot of different ways. Governor K. Warren will agree with me on this one. And
I
so
agree.
he certainly had some success. He was the flavor of the month nationally, and he certainly took advantage of it. And so
He did.
and he's going to do his thing. That's going to end up down the rest parts of Virginia during the rest of the Richmond campaign with Five Forks, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll see. We'll hit those again. So yeah. So I think MVPs, right? I know who you're going to pick.
Getty.
Yeah.
Yep,
You're gonna
Getty
pick Getty?
and on the Getty and on the Confederate side, I'm going to go with Gordon just for his plan that he had.
Okay. I think for the MVP for me in the Union is going to be George Custer. I think it's going to be Custer for what he did, because he really, by going around that right flank and really broke Ramsar. I think that was a big part of it as well. On the Confederate side, it's really tough to say. It really, really is. But I think I'd probably give it to Stephen Dodson Ramsar for holding out as long as he did,
Yep.
costing him his life in a situation where the whole battle was collapsing around him at that point, and he stayed.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people really like him for the stuff he's done. So that's a scoop with that. I think we have done justice to Cedar Creek
I think
on
we
the
have.
anniversary of the battle team.
Yes, we recorded on the anniversary of the battle, which was pretty cool.
That's very, very cool. So what's coming up next for us?
So we have our Facebook Live 10 o'clock Saturday morning. So if you're listening to this before 10 o'clock on October the 23rd, please join us.
You're not going to bail again? You're going to do it this time?
You fucker. And then next week on the 27th, we're pushing it back by a week. We are having our roundtable, but we are going to have like a Halloween roundtable. So we're still going to nerd out about the Civil War and stuff, but we would encourage all of you to show up in a costume because we have a prize for the best costume.
That's right. So dress up in your. We'll just say the prize
and it
right
doesn't
now.
have to be in Civil War theme. Just come dressed in a costume. We're going to pick best costume, and we've got something to give away to you guys, and we will be announcing what that is in a few days. And so if you've never attended before, info@civilwarbreakfastclub.com, and we will send you an invite to the roundtable, and you can come join us. And then on Saturday, October 30th, we will be dropping our second Halloween extravaganza. I want to say live from the Boo Barn, but that's kind of inappropriate. Our friend Jen Price, or Jay Price, is going to be joining us again. She joined us last year for a Halloween episode, so we were very happy to welcome her back for our Halloween episode this year. So that will be on Saturday, October 30th, that episode will be dropping.
So a lot of good things coming down the pike. So I think we can jump off and head off on the wild blue yonder here and call it a day. So any final words from you, Fincheroo?
Well, thank you for bringing it as you always do. You did awesome tonight. And thank you to all our listeners for your support for these 61 episodes. It's been quite a journey. Thank you all. We couldn't be here without you.
We are on to 62. We're on to Halloween and some good stuff. And I'm looking forward to the round table. I have my Halloween costume already picked out, Mary. We will wait to show that to everybody here a week from tomorrow on Wednesday. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. So we'll talk to you soon. We'll catch up with you down the road. Have a great rest of the week. Stay warm up there in the Great White North. And I'm going to try to stay warm here in the cold little town I'm in. So
you're in the same latitude as me. What are you talking about? You're in the Great White North too.
It is cool. It is cool. All right. So everybody, thanks for listening. Again, we appreciate it. We look forward to talking to you on the live. Definitely sign up for the round table. We'll have a lot of fun. I promise. Someone's going to win something really, really cool. And hopefully everybody dresses up and has fun with that. So that being said, Mary, off we go, and we'll see you on the other side.
See y'all later.
Peace out. Go Sox.
Bye. Go Sox.